After I lost my job, my wealthy husband said, "From now on, we split everything 50-50. I'll only care for myself." I didn't cry or shout. I just signed his contract and watched his face when I pulled out my revenge plan. 3 days. I'd been unemployed for exactly 3 days when Cole slid that document across our marble dining table like he was closing another hedge fund deal. The paper was titled Domestic Financial Restructuring Agreement, and my coffee went cold as I read through pages of subsections calculating how to divide our 8-year marriage into itemized columns. "I had my lawyer draw this up this morning," Cole said, uncapping his Mont Blanc pen, the one I'd given him for our 5th anniversary when I still believed our marriage meant something more than a business partnership. "From now on, we split everything 50-50. I'll only care for myself." The morning light streaming through our penthouse windows caught the gold trim of that pen, the same light that used to make our Saturday mornings feel sacred when I'd cook eggs, Benedict from scratch, while Cole read the Financial Times, occasionally sharing merger news from his world. The hollandaise sauce I'd perfected, the precise temperature of his coffee, the way I'd arrange fresh flowers on the table. All of it had felt like love. Now it felt like unpaid labor he was itemizing. "You had your lawyer draw this up," I repeated slowly, flipping through pages of subsections and clauses, "without discussing it with me first?" "I wanted to have a framework ready," Cole said, adjusting his Princeton class ring, a nervous tell I'd noticed during our first date. "More efficient this way." Efficient. Everything in Cole's world came down to efficiency and optimization. It's what made him brilliant at managing hedge funds and terrible at understanding why I was staring at him like he'd grown a second head. The document was thorough, I'll give him that. Rent division, utility allowances, grocery expenditures, even a formula for calculating shared space usage fees. My husband had turned our marriage into a spreadsheet while I was still processing my layoff from Hartman Capital. Monday morning had started normally enough. I'd kissed Cole goodbye, driven to downtown Chicago, grabbed my usual vanilla latte from the cart outside our building. By noon, I was sitting in Margaret's corner office while she explained that market conditions required strategic restructuring. We both knew the truth. The new CEO wanted his nephew in a senior position, and I was the casualty of nepotism dressed up as fiscal responsibility. "I need some time with this," Margaret had said, unable to meet my eyes as she pushed the severance package across her desk. "You're brilliant, Jade. This isn't about performance." But performance was all that mattered to Cole, apparently. "When did you decide this?" I asked, setting the contract down carefully, fighting the urge to crumple it into a ball. "It's been on my mind for a while," he said, finally looking up from his phone. "Your job loss just clarified things. My father always said dependency breeds weakness." His father. William Peaton, the tech entrepreneur who'd built his fortune and died at his desk at 58, leaving Cole millions and an inability to separate human worth from net worth. I thought about Tuesday evening when I'd finally told Cole about the layoff. He'd been in his home office, 3 monitors glowing with market data. I'd stood in the doorway watching him track futures prices. "I lost my job," I'd said. His fingers had paused on the keyboard for exactly 2 seconds before resuming their clicking. "When?" "Yesterday. They gave me 2 weeks severance." That's when he'd turned around, his expression unreadable. "Don't worry, we'll figure something out." But even as he'd said it, I'd watched him pull up our joint account on his center monitor, calculating how long my final paycheck would last. He'd poured himself a scotch, Macallan 25, a bottle worth more than most people's monthly rent, and excused himself for a quick work call that stretched 2 hours. I'd sat alone in our living room, staring at Lake Michigan through floor-to-ceiling windows, wondering when my unemployment had become something to handle rather than something to support me through. Now, 3 days later, he was presenting me with a contract that reduced our 8-year marriage to line items and subclauses. "What about Thursday?" I asked. "When you said we were partners?" Thursday's dinner had been his idea. "A chance to strategize," he'd said. I'd worn the black dress he loved, the one that made me feel powerful even when my professional world was crumbling. He'd ordered a bottle of Krug without asking what I wanted. The first time in 8 years, he hadn't asked my preference. While other couples held hands across candlelit tables, Cole had launched into a presentation about restructuring our domestic arrangement for maximum efficiency. Business speak for destroying everything we'd built. "We are partners," he said now, tapping the contract. "Equal partners. That's what this ensures." I looked at my husband, really looked at him. His perfectly styled hair, his Tom Ford suit even though it was Saturday, his expression of mild impatience, like I was a difficult client refusing to see reason. When had he become this person? Or had he always been this person and I'd just been too in love to notice? "You know," I said quietly, "I specialized in forensic accounting at Hartman." Something flickered across his face, concern, fear, but he recovered quickly. "What does that have to do with anything?" "Just remembering my skill set," I said, picking up the pen. His pen. My gift to him when we still gave each other presents that meant something beyond their price tags. Since I'm about to be self-sufficient, I signed the contract with a flourish that would have made him proud if he'd been paying attention to anything beyond his victory. Jade Peaton in perfect cursive. The last time I'd ever signed that name. "There," I said, sliding it back across the marble we'd chosen together in Italy on our honeymoon, when we were giddy with love and possibility. "Equal partners." Cole smiled, satisfied, already turning back to his phone. He didn't notice me taking photos of every page with my cell phone. He didn't notice me mentally cataloging every asset, every account, every carefully hidden financial transaction I'd pretended not to know about. He definitely didn't notice me texting my sister Emma. "You were right. It's happening." Because while Cole thought he was restructuring our marriage, what he'd actually done was declare war, and he'd just handed me the blueprint for exactly how to win it. Emma's text came back immediately. "Finally showing his true colors. Document everything." My sister had never trusted Cole, not since the day she'd met him at our engagement party when he'd corrected her pronunciation of Moet in front of everyone. I put my phone away and headed upstairs, but sleep wasn't happening. My mind kept replaying the signature, the contract, the cold calculation in Cole's eyes. At 5 a.m., I gave up pretending and slipped out of bed. Cole's side was already empty, sheets barely disturbed. Through the closed door of his home office, I could hear his voice, smooth and confident, talking to Singapore about profit margins and market volatility. Saturday morning, and he was already 3 hours into his workday. I padded to the kitchen, needing caffeine to process what my life had become. Cole's laptop sat open on the counter. He must have been working there before his call. The screen was still lit, and I wasn't proud of what I did next, but I wasn't ashamed either. The spreadsheet was titled Household Reorganization Post-JL. My unemployment had been reduced to initials. The Jade layoff like I was a line item in his quarterly reports. The columns were meticulous. Pre-JL monthly contribution showed my salary, our joint expenses, what percentage I'd covered. Post-JL sustainability model calculated exactly how much of a financial drain I'd become. He'd even created projections for different scenarios. If I found work in 3 months, 6 months, a year. The final column made my stomach turn. Optimal resolution timeline. He was calculating how long before he could justify leaving me. I took photos of every worksheet, every calculation, every cold assessment of my worth. Then I noticed another tab, MGM Consulting. Monthly transfers of $3,000 going back 6 months. Madison Grace Mitchell, his 28-year-old executive assistant, the woman who texted him about urgent presentations at 11 p.m. The conference call droned on through the door. Cole laughed at something, that practiced chuckle he used with clients. I closed his laptop and went to work. By the time he left for golf at 9, his Saturday morning tradition with Marcus Fitzgerald and 2 other Princeton buddies, I'd transformed our dining room into Command Central. Office Max had opened at 8, and I'd been their first customer, loading up on laminating sheets, color-coded folders, and enough supplies to rival a law firm. "Going to the club," Cole had said, grabbing his golf bag. He'd paused at the door, watching me arrange my supplies. "What's all this?" "Organizing," I'd replied, not looking up. "Being self-sufficient." He'd laughed, actually laughed, and left. The moment his Tesla pulled out of the garage, I got serious. 8 years of marriage meant 8 years of financial documents, tax returns, investment statements, credit card bills. Cole thought he was clever with his hidden assets, but forensic accounting had been my specialty at Hartman Capital. Finding money was what I did. I created my own masterpiece, a 47-page document titled Marital Asset Utilization Framework. If Cole wanted to run our marriage like a business, I'd give him the full corporate treatment. Section 1. Historical labor analysis. Every dinner party I'd hosted for his clients. Every weekend I'd spent charming investors at tedious golf tournaments. Every thank you note I'd written. Every gift I'd selected for his business associates. Every hour I'd spent making him look like a functional human being instead of the emotional void he actually was. Market rate for executive assistant services, $65,000 annually event planning, $45,000, social coordination, $35,000, investment consulting, $85,000. Section 2. Intellectual property contributions. The investment strategies I'd suggested that he'd presented as his own. The connections from my Hartman network that had become his clients. The market insights I'd shared over breakfast that had mysteriously appeared in his presentations to the Singapore office. Section 3. Opportunity cost analysis. The promotions I'd passed up to accommodate his career moves. The networking events I'd skipped to host his mother. The professional development I'd sacrificed to maintain his illusion of domestic perfection. By the time Cole's Tesla hummed back into the garage at 1 p.m., I'd bound everything in a leather portfolio that looked more expensive than it was. I heard him enter, the sound of his golf shoes on marble, the refrigerator opening. "Jade," he called, "why is there a digital lock on the fridge?" I didn't answer. Let him wonder. He found me in the dining room, still in his golf course attire. Those ridiculous plaid pants his Princeton friends convinced him looked good. His face was flushed from sun and probably a few beers at the 19th hole. "What is all this?" He gestured at my war room setup. "Your copy," I said, sliding the leather portfolio across the table with the same precision he'd used that morning. He smirked, that patronizing expression I'd once found charming. "Jade, come on." "Page 12, I interrupted. "Start with section 3-2. Still smiling, he opened the document. I watched his face change as he read. Retroactive compensation for unrecognized labor contributions, 2016-2024. "This is," he started. "Thorough," I supplied. "Keep reading." His smile died completely at the total. $347,000 in uncompensated labor, calculated at market rates for comparable services. Executive assistant, event planner, social coordinator, investment consultant. "You can't be serious," he said. Page 36, previous cases for retroactive compensation in dissolved business partnerships. His phone rang, Marcus Fitzgerald calling to thank him for covering the drinks. Cole's hand shook slightly as he answered. "Mark, I need you to look at something. Legal opinion. Can I put you on speaker?" Marcus's voice filled the room, still jovial from morning drinks. "Sure, buddy. What's up?" "Jade created some kind of document about our household arrangement." "Send it over," Marcus said, his tone shifting to professional mode. I watched Cole photograph pages, his jaw tightening with each image. We waited in silence for Marcus to review them, the only sound the tick of the grandfather clock Cole's mother had given us as a wedding present. Finally, Marcus spoke, and he wasn't laughing anymore. "Cole, is this real?" "She signed my agreement this morning, so she created this." "No, I mean, are these numbers real? Did she really handle all this?" Cole's silence was answer enough. Marcus whistled low. Legally, she's got you by the balls, buddy. You wanted a business arrangement, she gave you one. And honestly, based on what I'm seeing here, she's undervaluing her contributions. You're supposed to be my friend, Cole snapped. I am your friend, which is why I'm telling you the truth. Either tear up both agreements and go back to being married, or prepare to write a very large check. Cole hung up without saying goodbye. We stood there facing each other across the table where we'd once shared romantic dinners, where we'd planned our future, where this morning he'd dismantled our marriage with a pen stroke. This is blackmail, he said finally. This is mathematics, I replied, echoing his words from that morning. Your idea, just properly implemented. Cole stood there for another moment, his hand gripping the portfolio so tightly the leather creaked. Then he turned and walked out, leaving my document on the table like evidence at a crime scene. I heard his office door slam, the lock clicking into place. That night, I barely slept. Not because of guilt, I was past that, but because I was planning. Cole thought he was the strategic one, the chess player, the one who saw 3 moves ahead. He didn't realize I'd been watching him play for 8 years, learning every gambit, every tell, every weakness. At 3 a.m., I crept to the living room with my laptop. Our smart home system was Cole's pride and joy, a $50,000 investment in automated everything. The future of living, he'd called it, spending weeks programming routines and zones. Now it would be my battlefield. The master control app was still logged into my phone. Cole had never thought to revoke my administrative access. Why would he? I'd never shown interest in his technical toys before. It took me 3 hours and several YouTube tutorials, but by dawn, I'd reprogrammed everything. Jade Zone and Cole Zone were born. My zones ran on new passwords, biometric locks that only recognized my face and fingerprints. His zones kept his original access, but with some creative restrictions I'd built in. The beauty was in the overlapping areas, the spaces we supposedly shared equally. Those would require both our authorizations to function. I was back in bed, feigning sleep, when Cole's alarm went off at 6 a.m. I heard him pad to the bathroom, yawning, then silence, then a muttered curse. The shower wouldn't start. Something wrong? I called sweetly. Jade, he called, something's wrong with the shower. I stretched lazily. Mine works fine. Try resetting your access code. More cursing. The sound of him jabbing at the control panel. Finally, the shower started, but only cold water. I'd restricted his hot water heater access to economy mode between 6 and 7 a.m. Energy efficiency, after all. By the time he made it to the kitchen, still shivering, I was already there with my coffee, reading news on my tablet. The coffee maker won't connect, he said, staring at the machine like it had betrayed him. That's in my zone now, I explained. Would you like to purchase a cup? I'm offering a special rate. Only $8 for premium brew. His face went red. This is ridiculous. This is the 50-50 arrangement you wanted. Equal division of assets. I took a long, satisfied sip of my coffee. Your coffee maker is in your office. He stormed to his office, and I heard the cheap Mr. Coffee machine I'd bought him gurgling to life. $20 at Target. It seemed appropriate. The week that followed was a masterclass in strategic warfare. Cole adapted to some restrictions, showering at night, eating breakfast at work, but I stayed 3 steps ahead. When he figured out the hot water override, I programmed rolling blackouts in his home office during peak market hours. When he started ordering grocery delivery to bypass the kitchen locks, I redirected packages to the building's main office, requiring his personal pickup. Through it all, I documented everything. Screenshots of his expensive delivery orders. $85 for breakfast, $120 for lunch, $95 for dinner. Photos of him standing helplessly in front of locked appliances. Video of his increasingly frantic attempts to override systems I'd protected with forensic-level security. But the real breakthrough came Wednesday night. Cole was in the shower when his phone lit up with a text notification. I shouldn't have looked, But then again, he shouldn't have been funding his assistant's apartment while making me document every cent I spent on groceries. Can't wait to see you tomorrow, baby. From Madison Mitchell. The water was still running. I grabbed my phone and photographed his screen, making sure the timestamp was visible. Then I opened my evidence folder, yes, I had an evidence folder now, and filed it under Exhibit A, Emotional Asset Misappropriation. Thursday morning, Cole left early, mumbling something about breakfast with clients. I waited until his Tesla disappeared into traffic, then made a call to Janet, my former colleague at Hartman, who now worked in the same building as Cole's firm. "I need to borrow your visitor pass," I said. "Jade, what are you planning?" "Research," she sighed. "Second floor cafe, 20 minutes. The building's lobby was all marble and glass, trying so hard to scream success that it felt desperate. Janet met me at the cafe, sliding her visitor pass across the table. "15th floor is Cole's firm," she said, "but you didn't get this from me." "Get what?" I smiled, pocketing the pass. "I didn't go to the 15th floor. I went to the parking garage and waited. Cole's Tesla sat in reserved spot P47, right next to P48, which belonged to a familiar white BMW with vanity plates. 28 Maddie 28. Subtle. They emerged from the elevator together, Cole's hand on her lower back, guiding her toward her car, the kind of casual intimacy that comes from practice. They were laughing about something, her head tilted back, his face more animated than I'd seen in months. I took photos, then followed them. They went to Brewer, a restaurant so exclusive it didn't have a sign, the kind of place Cole used to take clients he was trying to impress. Now, apparently, it was where he took his assistant for emergency meetings. I was sitting in my car reviewing the photos when someone tapped on my window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. Victoria Peaton stood there in her St. John's suit and pearls, looking like old money and older judgment combined. Cole's mother, my mother-in-law. The woman who'd never quite approved of me but had been too polite to say so directly. I rolled down the window. "Following my son?" she asked, but there was no accusation in her voice, just curiosity. "Victoria, I can explain." "No need." She opened my passenger door and slid in, bringing with her a cloud of Chanel No. 5. "I was at Brewer myself. Library Foundation lunch. Imagine my surprise seeing Cole with his assistant." We sat in silence for a moment. "I know about Madison, dear," Victoria said finally. "Have known for months." My stomach dropped. "Why didn't you tell me?" She turned to look at me directly. "Because Cole's father had his own Madison once. Her name was Jennifer, 26 marketing coordinator. Thought she was in love." Victoria's smile was sharp as winter. "I handled it differently than you're handling this." "What did you do?" "I stayed quiet, played the perfect wife, let him have his fun." She adjusted her pearl necklace. "Then Jennifer got pregnant. William paid her to disappear, but the damage was done. The board found out. His reputation never recovered." "I'm sorry, Victoria." "Don't be. I got everything in the end. The houses, the investments, the company shares." She studied me with new interest. "But your way, all this documentation, the contracts, the digital warfare Emma told me about." "Emma talked to you?" "She called yesterday, worried about you, but I told her not to be." Victoria smiled, and for the first time since I'd known her, it reached her eyes. "Your way might be more effective, certainly more interesting." She opened her purse and pulled out a flash drive. "What's this?" "Security footage from the Piton building. 6 months' worth. Amazing how often Madison had to work late, how often Cole had to supervise." She pressed it into my hand. "Call it a wedding gift, 8 years delayed." I stared at the flash drive, this small piece of plastic that felt heavier than my wedding ring ever had. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because," she said, checking her Cartier watch, "Cole is making the same mistakes his father made, but with less style and even less discretion. At least William had the sense to be subtle. She opened her door, then paused. "I'm coming for tea tomorrow. Have Earl Grey ready." She left me sitting there, holding evidence I hadn't even asked for from a woman who'd spent 8 years making me feel like an interloper in her son's life. Friday afternoon, Victoria arrived precisely at 2 p.m., wearing a different St. John suit, but the same expression of mild disappointment she'd perfected over decades of charity boards and country club politics. "Earl Grey?" I asked, already knowing the answer. "Please." I went to the kitchen and returned with my laminated price list, the one I'd created after Cole's 50-50 statement. "That'll be $12, includes preparation, service, and cleanup." Victoria's perfectly shaped eyebrows rose slightly. She opened her Hermes wallet, not the everyday one, but the special occasion piece that probably cost more than my car, and counted out exactly $12 in singles. "Cole's policy," I said, placing the bills on the coffee table. "I'm just following the rules he established." Indeed, she maintained eye contact with an intensity that could freeze champagne. "Make the tea, dear. We need to talk." When I returned with the Earl Grey, properly steeped in bone china cups, the whole ceremony she'd trained me in, Victoria had spread documents across my coffee table, old documents, yellowed at the edges, some handwritten in fountain pen. 1987, she said, lifting a credit card statement. "William started his own restructuring of our marriage. Said I'd become too dependent, too comfortable. Sound familiar?" The statement showed charges to hotels, restaurants, jewelry stores, none of them for Victoria. Jennifer, Victoria continued, was 26, marketing coordinator at his firm. Blonde, ambitious, thought she was special. She sipped her $12 tea. They always think they're special. "What did you do?" "Nothing at first. I let him think he was clever, let him make mistakes, and he did. So many mistakes." She smiled, sharp as winter moonlight. "Then I started moving money." She pulled out another document, a trust agreement thick with legal language. "William thought he controlled our finances. He was the businessman, after all. But I'd been managing my father's estate since I was 21. I knew more about offshore accounts and asset protection than William ever bothered to learn. By the time he asked for a divorce, I'd already moved 70% of our liquid assets into trusts he didn't know existed." "That's brilliant." "Vindictive. Necessary." Victoria shrugged. "It was survival. But you're doing something different, something smarter." She pulled out a thick legal document, pages tagged with colored tabs. "This is William's prenuptial agreement template, the one Cole used for yours, with modifications." I took the document, scanning through familiar language until she pointed to a specific section. Section 17B. William insisted on this. Financial deception affecting marital assets. He thought it would protect him if I tried to hide money. Her laugh was bitter. Instead, it became his downfall. Jennifer got pregnant. He paid her to disappear. That payment constituted financial deception affecting marital assets. And Cole kept this clause? Modified it, expanded it, made it even more comprehensive. Victoria turned to the marked page. Any undisclosed financial transaction over $5,000 that affects marital assets or stability can trigger immediate forfeiture of claims. $30,000 to Madison over 6 months, all documented. Victoria, this is your ammunition. Use it wisely. She stood, gathering specific documents while leaving others. Keep these. The originals are in my safe deposit box if you need them for court. Why are you really doing this? She paused at the door. Because I spent 30 years pretending my marriage was perfect, while William humiliated me with younger women. You're not pretending. You're fighting. And frankly, she smiled again, that sharp winter smile, it's about time someone in this family fought back properly. The next morning, I called Patricia Nakamura, the divorce attorney Emma had recommended. Her reputation for destroying prenups was legendary in Chicago legal circles. "I need to see you," I said, "today if possible, and I need a forensic accountant. I work with the best, Keiko Tanaka. She's expensive, but she finds everything." "How expensive?" $5,000 retainer, each. $10,000, my entire severance package minus what I'd already spent. Cole thought I was using it for the therapy he'd been suggesting. "You seem stressed, Jade. Maybe you should talk to someone about your adjustment issues." "Book them both," I said. The law offices of Nakamura and Associates occupied the 30th floor of a building that screamed competence and discretion. Patricia herself met me in the lobby, mid-50s, silver hair and a power bob, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. "Emma says you have an interesting case," she said, leading me to a conference room where another woman waited. Keiko Tanaka, I assumed. Younger, sharper, with the kind of analytical intensity that made me think of a human calculator. I spread everything on the table. The contracts, the flash drive from Victoria, my own detailed spreadsheets tracking 8 years of uncompensated labor, photographs of Cole and Madison, bank statements showing the MGM consulting payments. Patricia whistled low. "He actually signed this 50-50 agreement?" "His idea? Had his lawyer drafted." "And you have security footage of the affair?" 6 months' worth. Plus financial records showing he's been paying for her apartment. Keiko was already deep in the bank statements, her fingers flying across her calculator. "These MGM consulting payments, they're just the beginning. Look here." She pointed to a series of transfers I hadn't noticed. "He's been moving money for 2 years, Cayman accounts, Swiss numbered accounts. Not illegal, but definitely violates any reasonable interpretation of financial transparency in a marriage." "Can you trace it all?" "Give me a week," Keiko said. "Maybe less." Patricia pulled up Cole's firm website on her laptop. Peaton Capital, his father's company. "Cole's a senior partner now," I said. "And Madison Mitchell is listed as Executive Strategic Consultant," Patricia noted. "Interesting title for someone with 0 actual consulting experience." She leaned back in her chair, a predatory smile spreading across her face. "The prenup has a financial deception clause. Section 17B, any undisclosed financial transaction over $5,000 that affects marital assets triggers immediate forfeiture of claims." $30,000 to Madison so far, I said. "More in whatever Keiko finds in those offshore accounts." Patricia's smile widened. "Your husband just handed us a nuclear weapon. We spent 3 hours building the strategy. Keiko would trace every penny. Patricia would document the pattern of deception. I would continue gathering evidence while they prepared the filing that would destroy Cole's carefully constructed exit plan." "One more thing," Patricia said as we finished. "Document everything from now on. Every conversation, every transaction, every time he breathes wrong. And Jade, be careful. Cornered animals get dangerous." That weekend, Cole announced he was going to Boston for a weekend conference. I'd seen the hotel confirmation email on his phone. The Ritz-Carlton. 2 rooms booked. MGM Consulting must need extensive strategic consultation. An hour after his Tesla disappeared down Lakeshore Drive, the doorbell rang. Madison Mitchell stood in my hallway, all 5'10" of her, wearing designer jeans and confidence like armor. "I need to get some work files from Cole's office," she said, already stepping forward like she owned the place. "He's in Boston," I said, not moving from the doorway. "I know. He gave me permission." "No." She blinked, clearly not used to being refused. "Excuse me?" "No, you can't come in. Cole wants to give you files. He can do it himself, at the office, during business hours." Her perfectly glossed lips tightened. "You don't understand. These are important documents for Monday's meeting." Then Cole should have remembered them. I started to close the door. She put her hand against it, forcing it open. Look, I don't think you understand the situation here. I pulled out my phone, already recording. Explain it to me. Maybe it was my calm tone, or maybe she was just that confident. But Madison stepped closer, lowering her voice to a whisper that my phone still caught perfectly. Cole promised me this place would be mine soon, so maybe you should start packing now. Save yourself the embarrassment later. How soon? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Few weeks, maybe less. Depends how quickly his lawyer can prove you're unfit. She smiled, all teeth and no warmth. The crying, the paranoid behavior with the locks and contracts, it's all documented. Mental instability due to job loss, classic case. I let her get to the elevator before emailing the cease and desist letter Patricia had prepared. Legal notice to stop harassment, stop attempting unauthorized entry to my residence, and stop interfering with my marriage. Copy to Cole's firm's HR department. Copy to their legal team. My phone buzzed immediately. Cole, from Boston. What did you just do? I didn't respond. Instead, I called Keiko with an update on Madison's confession and a request to expedite her investigation. Already done, Keiko said. You're going to love this. Cole's been billing Pete on Capital for Madison's consulting fees while she provided zero actual services. The invoices are fake, the work non-existent. Not enough for criminal charges, Cole's too smart for that, but enough to trigger an internal investigation at his firm. Monday morning, Patricia called with the final piece of evidence that would end this war permanently. We're filing today, she said. Dissolution of marriage based on financial deception, with a demand for full asset disclosure and immediate injunctive relief. By noon, Cole's accounts will be frozen pending a complete audit. What about the prenup? What prenup? Patricia's voice was pure satisfaction. Section 17B voided it the moment he started paying Madison's rent. I dressed carefully that morning, the red Armani suit I'd bought myself after closing the Henderson acquisition. Power dressing for total victory. Cole was already gone when the process server arrived at 8 a.m. By 9, the papers were filed. By 10, his firm's managing partners were calling emergency meetings. By 11, Madison's access to the building had been revoked. At noon, Cole's phone started ringing off the hook. I was having lunch at my favorite cafe when he finally called me. Jade, what the hell is going on? My accounts are frozen. The partners want to see me. Madison's been escorted out of the building. Check your email, I said calmly. Everything's explained in the settlement demand. 2 weeks later, Cole sat across from me in a mediator's office, his expensive lawyer replaced by some overworked public defender type who probably charged per hour what Cole used to spend on lunch. My client is prepared to offer, the lawyer began. Your client's terms are non-negotiable, Patricia interrupted, sliding our final demand across the table. The penthouse, 70% of all assets, including offshore accounts, and $347,000 in retroactive compensation for uncompensated labor. Cole's lawyer whispered urgently in his ear, probably explaining that a public trial would expose the embezzlement, the affair, the fake invoices, everything. This is extortion, Cole said, his voice shaking. He'd lost weight, his suit hanging loose on his frame. This is mathematics, I replied, using his favorite phrase one last time. Sign it or we go to trial. He stared at me across the table, and for a moment I saw the man I'd married. Brilliant, confident, convinced the world was his to conquer. Then that man crumbled, and he picked up the pen with a trembling hand. His signature was shaky, nothing like the bold strokes he'd used on our marriage contract 8 years earlier. 6 months later, I was reviewing applications for my new consulting firm. Equal means everything. When Emma texted me a screenshot from Madison's Instagram. Dating in Chicago is impossible. This guy actually invoiced me for half our dinner date, calculated tax and tipped down to the penny, then charged me for his gas to pick me up. Why are men so cheap? Dating nightmare corner Chicago mentir. Splitting bills is not romantic. I laughed until my sides hurt. Madison had found her perfect match. Someone who treated relationships like transactions, exactly like the man she'd helped destroy my marriage to get. The comments were even better, full of women sharing similar stories about cheap dates and split bills, completely missing the irony. Sometimes karma doesn't just come around. Sometimes it comes around wearing designer jeans and complaining about the exact behavior it helped create. And sometimes that's the most satisfying revenge of all. Today, Equal Means Everything has helped over 200 women recognize and escape financial abuse in their marriages. We document everything, build ironclad cases, and make sure they get exactly what they deserve. Not 50-50, but 100% of what they've earned. Because I learned something important from Cole's contract. When someone shows you exactly how little they value you, believe them. Then show them exactly how much that mistake will cost.